Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of my trip down memory lane back to the Pacific Crest Trail and my Thru-hike exactly 10 years ago. In the last episode we went to Red's Meadow, a small mountain lodge in the middle of the high Sierras, beautifully situated in a forest. And we spent a leisurely afternoon there, ate 1 or 2 ice creams and plundered the hiker boxes very thoroughly. And there was really a lot to eat in those boxes. They were top hiker boxes. I even got a few mountain house meals out of them. I remember that. These things are really expensive, but also really tasty. And well, we usually ate ramen or mashed potatoes or something like that. And then a mountain house from the hiker box was a really classy dinner. Or I think I even had a few breakfast dishes from Mountain House out there. Something with raisins or fruit, I think. Well, that was very successful in any case, and we then, just hung around there a bit, and then in the late afternoon or early evening, we walked out and came straight to this highlight, the Devil's Postpile National Monument. These are some basalt columns that were formed by a volcanic eruption, like, I think, 100,000 years ago or something like that. And things like that always fascinate me a lot. When these mathematically correct shapes appear in nature, there's hexagonal shapes that don't look very natural to me. They more or less look like a sculpture was being involved or something, even though it's completely natural, of course, and I really like that. In general, you're very spoiled on the PCT when it comes to natural spectacles, so you often see interesting geological formations or old trees or whatever. Later on, we also come to volcanic areas, so active volcanic areas, and I think it's great that you're spoiled with such sweets on the trail all the time. What we weren't spoiled with was the absence of mosquitoes. The mosquitoes were really more and more annoying and intrusive, and so I had to. You can see it here with my combat gear, so to speak. I actually had to hike with this head net more and more often now. Before, it was actually the case that when you were hiking in the flow, that they weren't that annoying. But now it was really the case that they were constantly sitting on your face. And if you had any exposed skin on your arms or anything like that, you were covered in mosquitoes. It really wasn't nice at all. Which is why on the first evening after we left Red's Meadow, or the second, I can't remember exactly, but pretty soon we made a nice campfire, which was allowed again. And of course the smoke drives the mosquitoes away, and we were able to have a nice evening by the fire and enjoy a nice meal outside and so on. And the thing is, now we are in bear territory, and you're not supposed to eat in a tent, but eating outside was often a real struggle because of the mosquitoes. So that evening we were able to do it without being disturbed, and that was really nice. Yeah, you can see a video here, so it's a bit shaky. Unfortunately, it wasn't me who took it, but my girlfriend, and yeah, she was very lucky to see these 2 bear cubs. There should be a second one coming soon. So I wasn't there when she filmed that, and when we met up again in the evening, she told me about this experience that she had somehow heard them running up the trees and then immediately looked out to see where the mother was. Because this can be really dangerous if you get between the mother and her young. But luckily the mother was on the same side of trail as the young. And so it was just a great experience to see them, and it made me very jealous at the time because I really wanted to see a bear. I had never seen bears in the wild before, and I really wanted to. It's also quite likely that you see one on the PCT. I think it's more likely that you will see one than not. And yeah, I also really wanted to see a mountain lion, but that's super unlikely. But I thought to myself, if I don't see any bears, then I'll be really disappointed. So I spent the whole day on the lookout, but didn't see any. And well, she showed me this video in the evening, and of course I was happy for her, but I was also a bit jealous. But I will definitely see another bear later. Yeah, and then bit by bit we headed towards Yosemite National Park. You could see that there was more and more water. Yosemite is famous for its many waterfalls, and I saw that the water was definitely getting rougher, and as I said in the last episode, I really like that. Here we see a few more videos, a small compilation of such moving water from this episode. Yes, there is something special about that, isn't there? Especially when it cascades down, I always find that really beautiful. And yeah, especially I can only say it again after this long time in the desert. It was simply wonderful to see so much water again. Water is life, you know. You cannot live without water, and somehow I think it's a primal instinct to feel drawn to water. It's also calming, at least for me, when I look at water. It has a calming aura, even if it's as wild as it is here. It was generally very wild, not just the water, but the whole landscape we walked through was incredibly wild. Compared to the Sierras, the desert is quite close to civilization. You don't pass a road every day, but you always see some kind of human infrastructure, be it wind turbines or power cables or even some scrap matter that has been dumped in the desert. And that was no longer the case here. There are hardly any roads through the high Sierras. And if you want to get out of this mountain ridge, you know, you always have to hike off trail, and which means that on the trail itself, you're actually in real nature the whole time, and only very rarely do you come across something like Red's Meadow or VVR or whatever. And that was really, really nice. Yes, I remember this break really well. I think I said in another episode that you really miss backrests on the PCT when you're hiking in general, and this piece of rock here was just perfect for lying down on like a deck chair with your feet up a bit. That's always very pleasant to get the blood flowing back from your feet. And then there was this part for backrest too, and that was really, really nice. And then especially with this great view and right by the water, that was a wonderful break. I laid there for a long time. I still remember that now. It was simply a great place, and I still think back to this place from time to time. And then we reached Yosemite Wilderness. It's not the national park, I think, but it's more or less a small offshoot of it, and the national park begins just beyond it. And here you can already see the inscription, Bear Habitat, proper food storage required by federal law. So again, we had to carry bear canisters at this moment, and I was really on fire now, and I really wanted to see a bear today. And I remember that we were heading towards Tuolumne Meadows, a place where there is a campsite and where there is, you know, it's kind of the gateway to Yosemite Valley, where all the famous mountains are, Half Dome and El Capitan and so on. And in the radius around Tuolumne Meadows, in 11-mile radius, you're not allowed to camp because there's such high level of bear activity that there are probably more frequent attacks, or not attacks, but break-ins into tents. And I don't think there are deaths or anything, but they just raid the tents for food. And now I was really looking right, left, the whole time to see if I could spot a bear somewhere, but I didn't get a chance. Yes, this is a picture of, these are not my shoes, they are my girlfriend's, but it's a good example of how hard a trail like this can be on your footwear. So here you can see it's already completely worn through here at the front, and the sole is already completely worn out. And yeah, she bought a new pair of shoes in Tuolumne Meadows, but it was really, really necessary. Most people go through about 4 or 5 pairs of shoes the whole way. I also had this model here, and I walked the first 1,100 miles or something like that in it, so really far. And then I bought another pair of shoes for $20. We get to that later, and ran another 800 miles, and then from then on I only got shoes from hiker boxes. So I effectively only used 2 pairs of shoes, and that was really pretty strong. I'm proud of that. But above all, I was also surprised how long I was able to use my first pair, and they didn't look anywhere near as bad as these. Yeah, and here we are in Yosemite National Park. Beautiful. So with the waterfalls, and Yosemite somehow has such specially shaped mountains, such round mountains, and that is somehow, I thought it was quite beautiful, and to see it like this now. And we didn't go into the valley. Some people do a side trip into the valley, but there was so much going on, and you have to get permits and stuff, and there were so many people, and then we kind of thought to ourselves, come on, we're walking through this spectacular scenery all the time, we don't need to see Half Dome or anything. In hindsight, I might be a bit sad about that decision, but to be honest, we really had such a great time in Yosemite with this great scenery around us the whole time that we didn't really need it. It was a real pleasure to hike along there. You can also see from my stride how good mood I am, and it's really, when you get around every bend, a new waterfall, a new mountain panorama, and so on, it was really a feast for the eyes, and to hike there. You could almost say it was a bit exaggerated how spectacular it was. Like the nature was really showing off. Yeah, here's another video of a waterfall. It's quite majestic. And then the view down into the valley. Yep, it's quite nice there. And then, of course, this water tasted great, especially compared to the cistern water we often had in the desert, which is really stale and stagnant. And this water, of course, was crystal clear, ice cold mountain water, and that was a huge difference in quality. But we still filtered it because giardia is also common and you shouldn't drink it unfiltered. Some people do that and it works well for some, but not for others. And we just said to ourselves, we don't have to take this risk. Although I found filtering water extremely annoying. Yeah, this is the path to Tuolumne Meadows. It's already so well trodden that I remember it was impossible to use my trekking poles there because the sides of the trail were so much higher than the base of the trail, and I would have had to shorten my trekking poles, and I was constantly thinking, oh come on, it can't go on like this. I'm sure it will be normal again. And I can well remember how annoyed I was that I suddenly had to walk like that all the time. I think I even made them small at some point because it just kept on being like that. That was definitely an indication that there were a lot of people hiking there, and in Tuolumne Meadows itself there were so many people. And we set up our tent on the campground and then went down to the store. There's a store there. I think it's closed now. But back then it was such an important place for everyone. There were just a few things to buy, and we had a parcel sent there. But we sent it back again because there was so much food in the hiker boxes that we didn't need our parcel at all. So we then simply sent it to the next stop. And we also met Alex Honnold there, this famous climber. I didn't know who he was at the time. But other hikers were like, wow, that's Alex Honnold. And I was like, who's he? And then the other hiker explained it to me. And at the time, I didn't have any idea about the climbing world and the achievements of individual climbers. I did climb back then, but it was just a hobby for me. And I've since had a look at some of his achievements and saw his movie and everything. And I remember him being in his van and doing pull-ups in his doorway, and I don't know if he had a board there or if he was doing pull-ups in the door hinge or whatever. But in any case, there were a few of his fans there and they took photos with him and stuff. I thought it was cool, but of course I didn't do it because I didn't know him at all at that time. But I definitely think it was cool that I saw him there in retrospect. What I can also remember is that we ate a pretty awesome black bean burger there. It was really tasty, vegetarian burger. Very good. So this restaurant there, which was also somehow at the side of the store or something. It was really nice. And I think it was the first time we'd had fresh food for a long time. Otherwise, we tended to have trail food or some basic fast food in town. And sure, burgers are also fast food, but it was all fresh and homemade and everything, and it was really delicious. Very, very tasty. And then there was also a ranger who checked everyone's bear boxes, bear canisters. That was also cool that we didn't carry that thing along for nothing. I mean, not for nothing, of course, it is for our own protection, but it was nice that we got checked finally. And in the evening, I think we were all sitting around the camp, and also in camp, there were warning signs everywhere about beware of bears and stuff like that. And the whole time we were like, yeah, where are they? But none of them came. And at some point, we just hiked out again and hadn't seen a single bear in this so-called bear-infested country. We would now continue towards South Lake Tahoe. That's the next major town stop. We had planned a short stop before that, but more on that later. The weather was getting worse, as you can see here. It's raining. I'm a bit sad. We've been very spoiled in terms of good weather over the last few weeks. It was really perfect most of the time. And now it's a bit gray, but my God, it's like that. When you're spoiled, you get used to it, but a bit of rain. I mean, we had umbrellas with us, and as you can see, I didn't even need my rain jacket. So that was, complaining on a high level, I would say, but there wasn't that much to see over the next few days, and combined that with rain is really not so nice. There were a lot of flowers, which I really enjoyed, but we were mostly hiking through the forest and some burned areas again, I think, and there weren't those big panoramic mountain views anymore, but there were flowers, and that was a nice change. Now a little trigger warning again. In the next video, you can see my feet. And if you don't want that, you can simply skip this part by using the time markers below. But it might be interesting to see, because I filmed what my feet actually look like after a whole day of hiking in rainy weather, crossing rivers and so on.
Mal Video machen. So sehen die Füße.
Yeah, this is what the feet look like after a day, and they're steaming.
Und dampfen.
Yes, quite worn out. I've mentioned it before, the PCT is not to be underestimated physically, but surprisingly, I didn't have any pain or anything. I mean, those feet look pretty beat up, but in the morning, they were usually fine again once they had a chance to air out a bit. And it's always advisable to take off your shoes, take off your socks as often as you can during breaks and in the evening, of course. I was usually wearing flip-flops in camp. And if the weather is wet, trail running shoes aren't waterproof. And if you have to cross a lot of rivers and stuff, and then, the feet just look like that. And it's not nice, but it's just part of the experience. And your feet definitely build up a real strong callus and can take quite a lot over time. The weather then got better again. Thank goodness. It only rained for 2 days. And then we had our beloved mountain panoramas again. It was just, we were so spoiled from the Sierras and this great landscape that when it was gone, we were suddenly a bit bored, or at least I was a bit bored. And the problem was that I should have gotten used to it right now, because Northern California actually looked rather boring most of the time. That's where we are heading to in the next episode onwards. That was definitely a time when I wasn't having so much fun. But I was so spoiled by the Sierras that I was still expecting these views. And But from that point of view, I really enjoyed these last few days in the Sierras with these great lakes and the mountains. And you can see that I look very happy. So when I think back to the Sierras today, I have a feeling of complete tranquility, of complete wilderness. I don't know if you know Dick Pranicke. He's a famous, or maybe not so famous, I don't know, adventurer who lived for 30 years in a self-built cabin in Alaska, and he never actually left the place. So he only ever got a visit from his brother in a seaplane every now and then, who brought him some rice or something, and otherwise he lived there all the time. And it's kind of a similar landscape. I mean, of course it's different, but it's lakes and mountains and a few trees and so on, and it's just wilderness, and it's wilderness that I hadn't experienced in this dimension before. You know, I've been to Sweden, I've been to Norway before, but it's much smaller. Of course, you can travel for a week in Norway without passing any roads, but you can't walk as far as you can in the Sierras, or at least not in a straight line. So if you walk 200 kilometers in Norway in a straight line, you will definitely pass a road. And in the Sierras, that wasn't the case, and it was really, really great. And that also, it's something that I miss. But well, Europe is very densely populated region. Even Norway is probably more densely populated than the Sierras. Yeah, and then we hit the mega milestone, 1,000 miles. I thought that was really cool. The PCT is a total of 2,650 something miles, and here we are now at 1,000 miles in a 4-digit range, and it was a really crazy feeling that we had gotten so far. But I didn't really celebrate it. I got there and thought, great, took a picture and carried on running. Somehow I was already so caught up in just keeping going, you know, so I didn't throw a party or anything. Yeah, so here we have a little macro excursion. I also like it when there are drops of water somewhere and the sun is shining on them. I think this is a really nice thing to see. Great pictures anyway. I only had a compact camera with me that wasn't even particularly good at the time, a Panasonic travel camera, but I managed to take some really nice pictures with it. Something that I like. I like these little details in nature. If there's an interesting moss somewhere, or just drops like that, or an interesting stone, whatever, I like to look at things that like that and then take pictures of them. Yeah, but now the high Sierra terrain was slowly coming to an end. We went down to lower altitudes again, and the rocks, the colors changed. You can see right away that it had somehow turned reddish, and that was supposed to mark the end of the high Sierra. So we were now on our way down to Sonora Pass, which is a mountain pass at the foot of the high Sierras, and from there you can drive to Bridgerton, I think it's called. And we had now heard from several people that there was a fire on the trail north of Sonora Pass. The PCT wasn't closed, but it was completely smoky, as those people said. And we had been thinking the whole time, what are we going to do? Are we continuing to hike? Do we not hike there and just drive around this forest fire? And, you know, we had no experience with forest fires and such. And then we slowly came to this decision in our heads that we would skip this part from Sonora Pass to South Lake Tahoe, because we could not estimate how dangerous it was, you know. And it was a decision that wasn't taken lightly, but we talked to people that came hiking the other way, and they all said you cannot see anything. It's completely full of smoke and not nice to hike. And yeah, we were like, okay, this is maybe too dangerous to do. And then we decided to hitch from Sonora Pass to South Lake Tahoe. But more about that later. So you can already see clearly that the terrain has changed a lot. We're now back in such barren landscapes, no lakes, hardly any plants, and so on. And yeah, we also had to look at our train notes regarding water again. And that is when I realized, okay, that was it with the high Sierras. It went pretty quickly, but it was a great time. And yeah, we ran into a thunderstorm on the way to Sonora Pass. Everything still looks beautiful here, but back there you can already see how dark it is. And thunderstorms in the mountains are one of those things that are not nice. Especially when you're in such an exposed position. But what can you do? Here at Sonora Pass, two friends of ours, two hiker friends, were walking like 100 meters apart from each other or something, and lightning struck the ground between them. Totally crazy. Fortunately, I didn't know that when we were there. I only found out later. But yes, that can happen. And I have to say, I was terrified of thunderstorms as a child, but I've put that behind me now. But I still have respect for thunderstorms, which is smart, I think. And yeah, you can see from the look on my face that I wasn't entirely thrilled about walking through a thunderstorm. I could hear the thundering all the time, and I've also seen lightning back here and so on. So you can also see that it's really raining quite heavily over here or there. But yeah, you couldn't do anything about it. We were planning to camp down here in the valley at Sonora Pass near the road, and I definitely wanted to make it there. So, and then when we reached Sonora Pass, we set up camp, and as I said, we decided to bypass the next part of the PCT. In hindsight, I would say that wasn't necessary, but due to our inexperience, we just couldn't judge it at all. Later, we passed several forest fires in Oregon, so close that we could even see the fire. But at the time, it was something we had no experience of, and we were afraid of it. Forest fires are also quite unpredictable, and yeah, we decided not to take the risk, and it was probably the case that hiking there was not enjoyable at all. So we decided to skip this small part of the trail. In any case, we did enough side trails to get those miles back in. That in any case, but it was a decision that wasn't easy for us. You actually want to hike the whole trail, and we were incredibly lucky in our year that apart from this part and the closures which had been there from the last years, we didn't have anything we couldn't hike. So we'll come back to that in later episodes, but our timing was perfect, and other people's timing in our year was very different. And yeah, nevertheless, the next morning we woke up here with this beautiful view, all this deer. That was quite welcome, and the thunderstorm was gone. And then we hitched down to Bridgerton, which went pretty quickly. And then we tried to figure out how to get to South Lake Tahoe. It was like 80 miles or something, so quite a long way, and there was supposed to be a bus there, but the bus didn't run at this day, so we tried to hitchhike, and that wasn't too easy. I remember we were standing there for a while, and we're like, this is not going to work, but then we were incredibly lucky because Devilfish actually came by, the guy we'd already met a few times, who'd given us a lift a few times, and the one who drove along with the people in his car, you remember, I guess. And he actually drove us all the way to South Lake Tahoe. He picked up another hiker from Sonora Pass. She also wanted to drive around the fire. And yeah, then we were driven to South Lake Tahoe, and that's where we had our first real vacation. We were just tourists there. We pitched our tent at the campsite, and we were told straight away, yeah, 2 nights is fine, but after that everything is fully booked because it was Independence Day. And we were like, shit, what are we going to do? Because we had to stay a bit longer until the following Monday, because that's when the post office was open. And we were planning to do resupply for the whole of Northern California. But yeah, we just said, yeah, whatever. We will stay here for now, and then we'll figure something out. And yeah, we just enjoyed our time. We swam in the lake, laying around the beach, and ate a lot of things. And then Aerosmith played in the stadium. We weren't inside, of course, but we could hear them from the outside. And it was somehow completely absurd to be there in such a relatively large city with all the masses of people. And I mean, you can see how many people are standing in the lake here. Everything was full of people. And yeah, there was also a lot going on at the campsite itself. I saw some crazy things there. Some of the caravans they had, they are bigger than German houses. I can tell you that. This one is still normal, I'd say, but there were such huge ones which were actually trucks. And they had some rooms that came out of the sides. It was totally crazy. And some of them had garages in there, and then there was a motorcycle in the truck or car, a small car. It was really crazy. And yeah, but we resupplied, and as you can see here with all our boxes, and that was another logistical masterpiece in any case. But we managed it all, and yeah, After these 2 nights, when we had our own camp spot on the campsite, we simply asked the neighbors. So these lots, they are huge, and there was this family next to us, yeah, there was still plenty of space on their lot, and we were like, hey, we are hiking the PCT and stuff, and they didn't know what that was, and so we told them, and then we just asked them if we could just pitch our tents there, and they were like, sure, no problem, and then we pitched our tents at their lot, and so we basically moved the tents for like 5 yards or something, and it was totally crazy. There were, I don't know, 20 people or so. This group was really big, and they had a big family gathering, and they ate so much, and they invited us to everything, and it was really nice and really warm, and they were so nice people, and it was a really cool experience. And of course, it was also very nice to experience Independence Day, and now I show you a little clip of the fireworks. Yeah, it was spectacular fireworks, especially for the time. I mean, those things have evolved a bit too since then, but it was definitely super cool to see it over the lake. It's total pollution, of course, but I really like fireworks, and it was just cool. And people went completely crazy when there was USA in the sky, and so it's all a bit, it was great. It was a nice experience, and we were chilling there on the beach, and we had just walked 1,000 miles and had somehow also, we were proud about that, and we celebrated ourselves, and it was the perfect timing that we were in South Lake Tahoe at exactly this time. Yeah, but that's where we end for this episode, and in the next episode we'll be heading into Northern California, the last part of California before we reach Oregon. And yes, until then, as always, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you have anything to say or any questions, just write them in the comments down below, and otherwise, see you in the next video. Ciao!